My name is Lily Anderson. I'm 30 years old, and the day my parents' will was read, I learned exactly what they thought I was worth. I sat in that sterile conference room on the 15th floor of a downtown Austin skyscraper, the kind with floor-to-ceiling windows that made you feel exposed even in private moments. The air was thick with the scent of polished mahogany and the faint, bitter undertone of stale coffee from a pot that had been brewing since morning. Around the long table sat my family, or what was left of it after the funerals, my older brother Logan, our Aunt Marianne, and a couple of distant cousins who had shown up more for appearances than grief. The attorney Jonathan Reed adjusted his wire-rimmed glasses and cleared his throat, his voice as steady and impersonal as a news anchor delivering bad weather. He started with the big items, the ones that made Logan's eyes light up like he just closed a major deal at the firm. The family home, a sprawling estate on the outskirts of the city with manicured lawns and a pool that shimmered like a jewel under the Texas sun, went to Logan. Then the investment firm Anderson Equity Group, the powerhouse my parents had built from scratch, with its sleek offices and portfolios worth hundreds of millions. Vacation properties in Aspen for ski trips we'd never taken together as a family, and the Hamptons retreat where my mother used to escape for creative thinking sessions. The luxury cars, a fleet including my father's prized vintage Jaguar, and my mother's electric Mercedes. Bank accounts, investment portfolios, stocks, numbers that climbed into sums I couldn't even wrap my head around. More money than I'd ever make in 10 lifetimes of scraping by as a freelance graphic designer. Logan leaned back in his leather chair, crossing his arms over his tailored suit, that signature smirk curling his lips. It was the same look he'd given me since we were kids, back when he'd ace every test without studying while I pored over books for hours, or when he'd charm our parents into extra allowances while I quietly did chores to earn mine. He looked like he was trying on a crown, one that fit perfectly because in their eyes it had always been his. Aunt Marianne nodded approvingly beside him, her manicured nails tapping the table like she was already planning how to leverage her new proximity to the throne. My heart twisted in my chest, a familiar ache that I'd learned to bury deep over the years. I'd been the one there at the end, the hospital visits that stretched into sleepless nights, holding my mother's hand as the cancer treatments drained her, whispering stories from our childhood to my father when his heart condition left him too weak to speak. I'd rearranged my freelance schedule, driven across town in rush hour, brought meals and books and whatever small comforts I could muster. Logan? He'd sent flowers and emails, always tied up with work at the firm. But here we were, and I told myself not to expect anything. Expectations had only ever led to disappointment in this family. Then Jonathan cleared his throat again, flipping a page. And to our daughter Lily. My pulse jumped despite myself, a flicker of hope igniting in that dark corner of my chest. Maybe there was something, anything, that said I mattered too, that my quiet devotion hadn't gone unnoticed. We leave the painting titled Silent Tides from Elaine's office. That was it. A single painting. The one my mother had hung in her home office. A swirl of deep blues and muted grays that she'd stare at for hours during late-night work sessions. No explanation, no accompanying note, just a piece of canvas that the rest of the family had always dismissed as artsy nonsense. No share of the house, no stake in the firm, no financial cushion to ease the blow of losing both parents in the span of a year. Just that forgotten artwork, gathering dust on a wall everyone else ignored. The room fell silent for a beat, the kind of quiet that presses in like a weight. Logan glanced at me sideways, his smirk deepening as he fought back a laugh. "Guess that's all you deserve," he murmured, his voice low enough that only I and Jonathan could hear it clearly. The words landed like a slap, sharp and humiliating, right there in front of everyone. Aunt Marian stifled a chuckle behind her hand, pretending to cough. The cousins shifted uncomfortably, avoiding my eyes. Jonathan looked down at his papers, his discomfort palpable, but he didn't intervene. Why would he? This was just family business after all. I felt heat rise to my cheeks, a mix of shame and anger bubbling up from years of being the afterthought, the sensitive one, the artistic daughter who didn't fit into the cutthroat world of finance my parents had cultivated. I could have snapped back, demanded to know why the child who'd sacrificed her own life to care for them got nothing while the golden boy got everything. I could have stormed out, tears streaming, making a scene that would give them something to gossip about later. But I didn't. Instead, I swallowed hard, forcing the lump in my throat down like bitter medicine, and stared straight ahead at the city skyline beyond the windows. "Okay," I said softly, my voice steady even as my insides churned. Jonathan slid a folder across the table toward me, outlining the logistics. "You have a few days to retrieve the painting before the property transfers to Logan. If you need assistance." His words trailed off, awkward and unnecessary. I nodded, gathered my purse, and stood up without another word. As I walked out, I felt their eyes on my back. Pity from some, amusement from others. Logan's whisper echoed in my mind, a cruel punctuation to the moment that would change everything. Little did I know, that worthless painting held a secret that would unravel the carefully constructed lies of my family's empire. If you think the cruelest inheritance is being left with nothing but a token gesture, wait until you discover what my mother had hidden behind those brushstrokes, and how it exposed every deception they'd built their lives on. The drive home that afternoon felt endless, the Austin traffic a blur of honking horns and exhaust fumes that mirrored the chaos in my head. I gripped the steering wheel of my battered electric sedan, the one still technically owned by the firm, a perk Logan had extended with that same condescending smirk years ago. "Don't say I never gave you anything," he joked at the time. Now it felt like a leash, a reminder of how entangled I still was in their world. I pulled into my cramped loft in East Austin, a converted warehouse space with exposed brick walls, and a kitchenette that doubled as my workspace. It smelled faintly of coffee grounds and the citrus candle I burned to mask the urban grit seeping in from the street below. I dropped my keys on the counter, sank onto the worn couch, and let the tears come, silent at first, then in heaving sobs that shook my frame. Why? The question looped in my mind. Why had they valued me so little? Was it because I hadn't followed in their footsteps, choosing design over deals? Because I was the quiet one, the dreamer, while Logan was the ambitious heir apparent. Hours passed in a haze. I skipped dinner, too nauseous to eat, and eventually dragged myself to bed. Sleep came fitfully, haunted by fragments of memories, my mother's frail hand in mine, her eyes distant as she murmured about patterns and tides turning. I chalked it up to the pain meds, but now I wondered if there was more. The next morning, I woke with a resolve born from exhaustion. I couldn't change the will, but I could claim what was mine. I drove back to the family estate, the security gate sliding open with that familiar hum that now sounded mocking, like the house itself was reminding me I no longer belonged. Inside, the place was eerily pristine. Movers had already begun packing, boxes stacked in the foyer with labels in Sharpie. Anderson Master Suite, Anderson Library. No trace of the chaos from the final months, the oxygen tanks, the pill organizers, the hospital bed in the living room. It was as if my parents' suffering had been erased, airbrushed into oblivion to make way for Logan's new reign. Elena Morales, our housekeeper since I was 10, emerged from the kitchen, her face lighting up with a mix of relief and sorrow. "Lily Mija," she said, pulling me into a hug that smelled of lavender soap and fresh-baked bread. Her embrace was tight, grounding, the only warmth in that cold house. "I heard about the will. It's not right. Your mother. She would never have wanted this." She pulled back, her dark eyes searching mine, then glanced toward the stairs where more boxes loomed. She'd be heartbroken to see it all packed away like this. I managed a weak smile, though my throat tightened. "I'm just here for the painting, Elena." Silent tides from her office. At the words, something shifted in her expression. A flicker of knowing, perhaps, or hesitation. She nodded slowly. "Ah, that one." She loved it more than anything in that room. In her last year, she'd sit staring at it for hours, whispering to herself. Things like code patterns or tides turning. I thought it was the illness talking, the meds making her mind wander. We walked down the hallway together, our footsteps echoing on the marble floors. The office door was half closed, as if my mother, Elaine, might still be inside, hunched over her desk with her glasses perched on her nose, crunching numbers late into the night. Pushing it open, the room felt hollow. The massive oak desk was cleared of papers and monitors, the bookshelves stripped of volumes on finance and algorithms. But there on the wall above where her workspace had been hung Silent Tides. It was larger than I remembered, about 4 feet wide. A tempest of deep blues swirling into grays, blocks of color that evoked waves crashing under a stormy moon. Up close, under the natural light filtering through the windows, The painting revealed subtleties I'd never noticed as a child peeking in during her work hours. The patterns weren't random. They were deliberate, almost mathematical squares aligning in grids, repetitions that tugged at my designer's brain, whispering of hidden structures. It looked less like abstract art and more like a visualized dataset, a heat map or chart disguised as aesthetics. "She'd sit right there," Elena said softly, pointing to the worn leather armchair facing the wall, tapping her pen, murmuring about numbers and currents. "Your father, God rest him, hated it. Called it a waste of good wall space. Said she should hang something more impressive for clients." Elena's voice dropped lower. "But she insisted. Said it helped her think." I lifted the frame carefully from its hooks, surprised by its unexpected weight, as if it held more than just canvas and paint. Balancing it under my arm, I turned to Elena. "Thank you for everything," I said, my voice catching. She hugged me again, whispering, "Take care of yourself, Mija. And remember, things aren't always what they seem." In the driveway, I secured the painting in the back seat, glancing up at the house one last time. It loomed like a monument to everything I'd lost. Not just my parents, but the illusion of family. My phone buzzed as I started the engine. A text from Logan. "This is me. Let's talk about your future. I can slot you into a junior role at the firm. Family discount." No remorse, no acknowledgement of his cruel whisper in the conference room. Just business as usual. I drove back to my loft in silence, the painting's presence in the rearview mirror a constant reminder. Once home, I propped it against the wall opposite my desk, flipping on the track lights to illuminate it fully. Under the bright LEDs, the colors shifted, the blues fracturing into tiny segments, lines emerging that made my fingers itch for a stylus. This wasn't just art. It felt like a puzzle designed to be decoded. Curiosity overrode my grief. I opened my laptop and searched the artist's signature scrawled in the corner. A looping Ivas. Results were sparse. A few dead links to a shuttered gallery in New Mexico. No interviews, no portfolio, no social media footprint. It was as if the artist had materialized just long enough to create this one piece for my mother, then vanished into thin air. On a whim, I grabbed my phone and scanned the canvas with a QR reader app, angling it this way and that. Nothing. But as the afternoon light faded, I couldn't shake the feeling that my mother hadn't spent her final months obsessing over mere decoration. She'd been a brilliant mathematician, the brain behind the firm's predictive algorithms. If she stared at this for hours, there had to be a reason. It was almost midnight when I finally admitted defeat on work emails and turned my full attention to the painting. The loft was quiet, the AC humming softly, occasional car headlights sweeping across the walls. The canvas caught the glow from my monitor, its blocks shimmering like broken code. I rummaged in my desk drawer for a UV flashlight. I used it for checking security features on design proofs, and switched off the overheads, plunging the room into shadow. Sweeping the purple beam across the surface, at first nothing changed. Just the same blues and grays. But as I tilted it, thin lines bloomed, faint, ghostly, like invisible ink revealing itself. My breath hitched. I moved slower, hands trembling, and the pattern resolved. Pixels, modules, a fragmented QR code embedded in the darkest pigments, painted with precision that bordered on the impossible. Heart pounding so loudly I could hear it in my ears, I whispered, "No way." I steadied the flashlight with both hands and positioned my phone scanner over the UV-lit sections, adjusting until the app recognized the whole. It hesitated, the loading circle spinning, then dinged. A link appeared, not to some spam site, but a secure portal from an institutional bank, the kind that handled fortunes for the elite, a name I'd overheard in my parents' whispered conversations. My thumb hovered, then tapped. The screen filled with a login field, my email already pre-populated, as if it had been waiting for me. Below, secondary key required. My gaze drifted to the frame's back, a pull I couldn't explain. I set the phone down and ran my fingers along the wood. One side was slightly thicker, uneven. Digging my nails into the seam, a small panel popped loose, revealing a narrow compartment. Inside, a folded envelope, edges yellowed, my name in my mother's elegant, looping handwriting. For a moment I just held it, the paper soft and heavy with unspoken words. Then with shaking fingers I tore it open. "Lily," it began. If you're reading this, it means I wasn't brave enough to tell you everything while I was still here. I'm sorry for that, more than you know." Her letter unfolded like a confession, page after page in her tight script. She discovered years ago that the firm, built on her algorithms for market prediction, had been corrupted. My father and Logan had twisted her work into tools for fraud, hiding assets offshore, manipulating reports, siphoning from client pensions and investments. She collected evidence quietly, unable to trust anyone inside, fearing for her safety and ours. "Your father thought you were too soft for this world," she wrote. "Logan saw you as too small to matter. But you see patterns they miss, Lily. That's why this key is yours alone." The QR was the first access point, designed to leave no digital trail. The second, a passphrase only I'd recall, the word she'd said whenever I faced doubt as a child, struggling with math or feeling overshadowed by Logan. "Tides turn with patience." I whispered it now, typing it into the field. The portal unlocked. Files cascaded onto the screen. Spreadsheets detailing shell companies, transaction logs routing funds through tax havens, email chains admitting to doctored reports, charts mapping illicit cash flows in patterns eerily similar to the painting's design. One file stopped me cold. A trust in my name, funded over years with money she documented as clean, earned before the corruption set in. Millions quietly amassed to protect me. There were also timestamps showing she'd shared partial evidence with Jonathan and initiated a confidential federal inquiry. Silent Tides wasn't art. It was a vault, a map, a mother's final act of defiance. My chest felt too tight, emotions crashing like the waves in the painting. Grief for her isolation, anger at the betrayal, a spark of empowerment I'd never felt before. I barely heard the first knock over the roar in my head. The second made me jump. Then a third, insistent, followed by Logan's voice muffled through the door. "Lily, open up." Aunt Marianne's sharper tone overlapped. "We know you have it. Open the door now." The handle rattled. Ice spread through my veins. How did they know I'd taken it so soon? The will was fresh. I hadn't told anyone. Then it hit me, the sedan company property with GPS. They'd been tracking me, treating me like an asset to monitor. My phone buzzed. "Logan, don't be stupid. That painting is firm property. Give it back and this goes away." I backed away, clutching the frame, the portal's glow illuminating their desperation. They weren't after sentiment. They wanted the key to their secrets. And I held it. That night sleep was impossible. I sat on the floor, back against the couch, laptop open as the room's shadows deepened. Every instinct urged me to panic, to hide the painting and pretend ignorance. Instead, I forced calm. First, I downloaded everything, compressing and encrypting with a password tied to my mother's passphrase. Backups went to multiple clouds, scattered like digital breadcrumbs only I could follow. Then, following her letter's guidance, I messaged Jonathan. "I found what she left. We need to talk." His reply came swiftly. "Secure line. Now." His voice on the call was measured but urgent. "Your mother approached me months ago with fragments of this. She started a confidential inquiry with federal investigators, but needed someone she trusted to complete it. She believed in you, Lily. If Logan and Marianne are at your door, they suspect the painting's significance. Get out, your place is compromised. Secure independent counsel immediately. I have referrals." After hanging up, I didn't hesitate. Laptop in bag, external drive pocketed, painting wrapped in a blanket. I slipped out quietly, down the stairwell to avoid the elevator's ding. The hallway was empty, but paranoia prickled my skin. In the parking lot, the sedan sat like a trap under flickering lights. Jonathan's warning echoed, GPS leash. I opened a rideshare app, booked a car and waited in shadows hugging the bundle. The driver, a middle-aged man with a dented hatchback, eyed it curiously. "Art collector," he joked. "Something like that," I replied, voice steady despite my racing heart. He dropped me 3 blocks from a 24-hour coffee shop with strong Wi-Fi and no prying eyes. Inside, the air reeked of burnt beans and sugar. I claimed a back booth, propped the painting beside me, and dove in. Using incognito mode, I searched for tax fraud attorney Austin Independent, scanning firms for one small enough for personal attention, big enough for clout. Dana Harris fit, specializing in securities and whistleblowers, no ties to Anderson Equity. I filled her emergency form. Whistleblower on family firm. Hard evidence. Need urgent consult. As I waited, Elena called, her voice a whisper. They're ripping apart the office, Lily. Yelling about that painting, asking if I saw you take it. They say you're confused, might misunderstand. But they're scared. I've never seen them like this. My eyes stung. Good, I said, surprising myself with the steel in my tone. Let them be. Mom told you something. Elena hesitated. If you started asking questions, to tell you to keep going no matter what they say. So keep going, Mija. Tears blurred my vision as I promised caution. Before sunrise, I secured a small furnished rental near Lake Austin under an alias, virtual card, burner email. The key waited in a lockbox. Inside, the space was anonymous, detergent scent, dust motes in the air. I leaned silent tides against the wall, sank onto the bed, and stared at my phone's referral list from Jonathan. I could run, vanish with the trust's funds once cleared. Or I could finish what my mother started. Expose the rot, reclaim my worth through action. They deemed me deserving of nothing but a painting. That painting would be their undoing. 2 days later, on a video call with Dana, her face framed by law books, she reviewed the files I'd securely sent. This isn't minor, Lily, she said, eyes widening. Systemic fraud, wire securities, conspiracy. Your mother's work is meticulous. Combined with her initial complaints, this triggers a full investigation. I've looped in the feds. They were waiting for these links. What now? I asked, voice steady but hands clammy. Stay hidden. No contact with family. Keep originals safe. They're moving fast. Warrants could issue soon. After, a knock shattered the quiet, sharp, authoritative. Lily, open up. We need to talk. Logan. Marianne. This doesn't have to be unpleasant. They'd tracked my phone location services from the family plan I'd never changed. I initiated a recorded conference with Dana and Jonathan, mic on the table, then cracked the door. Logan looked impeccable, but his eyes betrayed panic. Marianne spotted the painting, barged in. You left it to me, I said calmly. Logan sneered. Not to hack systems, steal data. I countered. I know about the fraud, the shells Mom's algorithms twisted. He dismissed her as paranoid, offered cash for silence. Or we paint you as the villain. My attorneys are listening, I revealed. Silence. Then another knock. Federal agents. Warrant for Anderson Equity. The raid unfolded in slow motion, rights, arguments, seizures. Logan spat. You ruined us. You did, I replied. I just revealed it. Headlines erupted. Investigations, detentions. I watched from shadows, my name footnote at first. Logan's arraignment. Prison. Restitution. Marianne cooperated, lost all. Firm liquidated. The trust cleared, I funneled portions to victims, then founded Tideshift Studio. Ethical UX for finance, exposing risks. Elena joined, her warmth anchoring us. We grew, workshops empowering the overlooked. Silent Tides hung central, a beacon. Logan's prison letters, rage, then regret, went unanswered. Forgiveness was my peace, not his absolution. Revenge was silent. Success from their dismissal. Moral. Scraps can be keys to empires. Have you turned dismissal into triumph? Share below.